Good morning, and it is time to get our priest on. Well, that's a pretty corny way of saying that both of our readings deal with the issue of priesthood. The first, of course, is to be with Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses. And again, there's kind of a review, right? He Jethro heard all that God done for Moses and for Israel, and what he did to Egypt. Um, and then he goes out to find his son-in-law, his daughter, and his grandsons. Um, Gershom, which again, I've been alien in a strange land. The other was Eleazar, for the God of my father said he was mine help. Um, Eli, right? God my help. Um, and Ezer, Hazar. Anyway, um, we could do Hebrew some other time. And delivered Moses or Israel from the sword of Pharaoh. Now, Jethro came with his sons and his wife unto Moses in the wilderness. So I assume this is Jethro's family with him. Um, did not double check on the language. Again, this is what we're doing. When Moses is encamped at the Mount of God, and there's kind of a protocol going on here. I'm your father-in-law. Dot dot dot. And Moses does him obeisance and honor. Right, honor thy father and mother. Then he again talks about the triumphs and travails that Israel had faced as the Lord delivered them from Egypt. And Jethro rejoices for what God's done. And he blesses God for what he's done. And then he says, I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, for in the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was over above them. So Jethro is a priest. We don't know a priest of whom or what. We assume of the Lord, maybe, or maybe it's just kind of ambiguous and God's people are finding out stuff about God and Jethro's finding out stuff, right? And he kind of realizes there was some spiritual warfare going on of God with the gods of Egypt, and God overthrew those false gods, and he's the greatest of all, greater than all gods, right? He's not even in that category of those others, those pretenders, if you will. And then he took a offering and sacrifices for God. And Aaron came, and all the elders of Israel, to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. So there's a priestly act where you eat before God, and the elders are there representing. And did Jethro do the priestly office rather than Aaron, right, or Moses? It seems that way. It seems that way. And so, again, I assume Jethro is a priest to Yahweh in some form or fashion, however that worked out. But also, how much is known? How much has been revealed that hasn't, and how much hasn't, and how much is God, willing to uh, condescend toward or deal with, right? How much, is just them scraping in the dark and him being merciful towards that scraping before he shows them how he really wants things to work out in order to reveal the gospel and help us understand what his salvation is going to be about in Jesus Christ. That's a bit of a debate for the Old Testament scholars. Some would see more of a clear cut. I would almost say, when I say conservative approach, where people, if everyone really is descended from Adam and Eve and really is descended from Noah, then there would be those who would keep on a memorial and remnant and remembrance of and practices of worshiping the true God, who call upon the name of the Lord, as we hear about in Genesis, right? In those days, they called upon the name of the Lord. And keeping on that tradition, whatever that was, Gentile and Jew, or descendant of Abraham alike. Another one would be more progressive. We're coming out of some sort of pagan background and coming to understand better. We're coming to learn about monotheism, almost an evolution sort of thing, where it starts with polytheism's more primitive, and then monotheism is actually what's going on, and God's revealing that and correcting things. I actually tend towards the former view myself. I don't see why there'd be a problem with understanding one God. And then, of course, others like Plato and other thinkers, come about to monotheism later just on the basis of logical consistency. But uh, Plato himself, if I remember from Joseph Pieper's Tradition, Concept, and Claim, references ancient legends, ancient myth, like a really ancient, the myth behind the myths, kind of a residual memory of one God, a monotheistic God. And is Plato coming up with that for his own devices, and he invented it, or is he actually really being a conservative there and reaching back to an ancient tradition they kind of knowingly rejected for favor of what idolatry and polytheism had to offer? I tend to be of that camp. Um, I'm just the evolution of religion school just does not. I don't find it very satisfying. But your mileage will vary. Um, Hebrews. Hebrews is God making promises upon his own name, right? Swearing upon the highest authority, right? So what's the best on the highest thing you could swear by? God. So God swears by himself. There's nothing higher, nothing that can be lorded over him except himself, right? He is himself. There's a perfect unity to himself. And the promises, blessing of Abraham, multiplying him, um, and so after he patiently endured, he obtained the promise. That's Abraham, right? With his living faith. Men fairly swear by the greater and an oath for confirmation as to them to end all strife. So again, they swear by the greater. God's the greatest. So again, um, and then God, when he makes an oath by himself, it's going to happen, right? It's immutable. It's unchanging. Um, God's not going to lie. God's all powerful, and he's going to be good to his own honor. And that's a consolation, right? God's made this promise to bless, to multiply, to grow um, the sons of Abraham, of which we are one, right? Father Abraham. And we flee to him for refuge, to lay upon the hope set before us, which anchors us. Okay, which hope we have as an anchor of the soul. Hope is still actually symbolized by an anchor in art. Um, the hope, an anchor cast into the deep, if you will, sure and steadfast, keeping the ship stable. It's the chain actually that attached to the anchor that keeps the ship still in the storm or wherever. And which entered into that within the veil. So again, into the depths, past the veil. Our hope is there behind the veil, the temple, right? I said this was about priests, right? Priestliness, the priest goes behind the veil. A high priest once a year on the Day of Atonement will go behind the veil. And we, in our humanity, are attached to Jesus Christ, our high priest, after the order of Melchizedek, who goes in to the most holy of holies, the holy place, his Father's throne, and is there. He's our hope, and we are tied, bound to him in faith in our humanity as well. Jesus is the forerunner, so that means we're going to go in after him. Jesus, made a high priest in the order of Melchizedek, is there behind the veil. And the veil, arguably, too, is his flesh. Because his flesh is torn, the veil is torn. Kind of the gateway, the entrance point, the transition point between heaven and earth, right? Because earth and heaven were separated by that veil in the temple symbolically. You have this vision of the firmament, right? This upper firmament, the heavens, the stars kind of are all playing a part in the temple. And all of that is meant to point towards Jesus Christ. And we're supposed to see that. And Jesus goes in before the Holy of Holies as our high priest. So with that, I'll leave you all. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you later this evening.